Webinar Series. So far, we've talked about messaging and framing and how to really frame your message to reach different audiences. And we talked about social media as a way that we can push out our messages to our own base and help build and grow our base of supporters. Tonight, we're going to talk about how we can get our message out into the greater, broader audience that we might find or reach through the internet or through newspapers. And so we're going to talk about creating our own media and defining our narrative. And this is Kara Cooper with the Kentucky Student Environmental Coalition, and I'm joined by Kayla Thorin, who is our KSEC Media Liaison. So let's go ahead and get started. So self-generated media really means that we can use our narrative and our voice to get our message across. Sometimes when we're working with newspapers or reporters, our message doesn't get conveyed exactly the way that we want to because the reporter has some sort of angle that they're trying to put on a story or they're aiming to be unbiased. But we can self-generate our own media, and that way we can really control what our message is and what the narrative is that we're telling. So tonight we're going to talk about a few different ways that we can self-generate media. One is through new media. That's social media, like we talked about in our previous webinar, as well as blogging. And then we have traditional media, self-generated media, like letters to the editor, and editorials and opposite editorials, or better known as op-eds. And that's a way that we can self-generate media in a newspaper. So when you're thinking about being a youth-based organization, you might even ask yourself, why bother with traditional media? But not only do you get to reach a different audience when you use traditional media, maybe you're looking to get your word out to older generations or decision makers, but also social media can be exclusive. Because if we rely just on using social media and blogging, we're really expecting that everyone who wants to be involved has access to the internet. And a lot of rural places, including eastern Kentucky, have really bad internet connection, and a lot of folks don't have internet in their home. And so using traditional media helps us to also reach folks who don't have regular access to the internet.
Traditional media we'll be discussing is letters to the editors, better known as LTEs. So this is a super short and easy way to get your opinion across in a newspaper. So they're usually less than 250 words, and just writing your opinion quickly, they're really easy to make. And you submit it to the newspaper via online, or they'll give you a contact person, and it's reviewed by the opinion editor, and they decide when or if they're going to run your piece. So here's an example of an LTE. This one's about how our senators that are running need to focus more on green energy instead of just talking about the coal industry and supporting that. So as you can see, it's really short. And it's just, you just want to be really concise with what you're trying to convey.
Yeah, and another form of traditional media that we can self-generate are editorials and opposite editorials. And these are longer opinion pieces in a newspaper. Editorials tend to take a strong position, and they're often written by the newspaper staff. They have an editorial team. Sometimes we can get our own editorials published, but it's kind of difficult to do. It's much easier to get an op-ed published, and those are written as a response to an editorial that show an opposite opinion. And when we're thinking about trying to get things published in the newspaper, we need to think about what makes them newsworthy stories. And a lot of times reporters and editors feel like stories that have very clear opposite sides are very newsworthy. We'll talk more about newsworthiness in our next webinar this next Tuesday. And here's an example of an op-ed that we got published for KSEC. So you can see this is a much longer opinion piece. And basically what Tyler did was he responded to an article, an editorial that was written, and he sort of just went line by line refuting the facts that were put into the editorial. And this was a really great one, and a lot of folks saw this, so it was really successful. So you want to follow the formatting instructions on the opinion page of the news outlet's website that you want to get published in. Usually on the opinion page there's a link. It says like submit a letter to the editor, and it'll give you either like an email address to send it to and tips about what the formatting is, or there'll be sort of a form where you can submit online. But if you can't find that information, feel free to send an email or make a quick call to the opinion editor and ask for instructions. They want to fill up that section every week with really good stories and narratives, and so definitely don't be afraid to reach out and try and get your op-ed or your LT published. Another tip is that you want to submit in a timely fashion. The news happens right now, not 2 weeks later. Especially in the digital age that we're in now, people want to get their news and information as soon as possible. So if you see something in the newspaper that you want to respond to, you should just write it right away and try to get it in as soon as possible. And like I was talking about on the last slide, you want to be newsworthy. Take a strong opinion and back it up with facts and lived experiences. And once again, this is sort of a review from our previous webinars, is that you want to think about your audience and frame your message accordingly. You want to frame your message differently depending on which newspaper you're submitting to, thinking about who are you trying to appeal to. And then once you get something published, you should really share it. You can put links to Facebook and Twitter and really encourage other folks in your base to read the really cool things that you're getting published. It's super exciting to see your name in print, and other people will be excited by it as well. Cool. So now we're going to talk about new media and ways that we can self-generate new media. And so just a quick review on social media from last week is that social media is really, really great for sharing our stories and using our own voice and messaging with our base and building our base. And you kind of have to ask yourself, how much can you even say in those tiny text boxes? And, you know, it's true what they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And using social media can be really powerful, but it's a very limited amount of space. And so oftentimes when we're using social media, we want to link to something where we can say something longer. So maybe we use social media and then link to our op-ed, or maybe we use you know, social media and link to our blog post so that we can tell a little bit more. Okay, excuse all the technical difficulties today. Sorry about that. So a blog is a website that contains the writer's experiences, observations, and opinions. And we can just link to a longer blog post. And what's cool about blogging is that you can use a lot of pictures, and you can really make it longer. You don't want to make it too long, though, because you want people to read the whole thing. So here's an example of a blog post. Where one of our members, Angel, blog posted about her experience going to the People's Climate March in New York City. And so blogs are a really great place to tell a story about an event or a campaign that you're working on or something exciting that's happened. It also can be a really great tool for holding people accountable. In your campaign, if you have a meeting with one of your decision makers and they tell you, yes, of course, we want to work with you on this issue, write a blog about it, get it out there as quickly as possible, because then you can hold them accountable for actually following through. KSEC doesn't have its own blog, but we guest blog on a couple of different places. So one is We Are Power Shift, which is a national youth climate movement blog. And anyone can go on wearepowershift.org and sign up to be a member and be able to submit blogs there. You can also tag yourself as part of KSEC, and then it sort of puts all of our blogs in the same place. So this is a really great place to reach an audience of other young people who are working on similar things, and a great place to read about what other people in the youth climate movement are doing. We also guest blog on Renew Appalachia, which is an Appalachian transition blog that's curated by the Mountain Association for Community Economic Development, or MESED. And this is a great place to reach a more close-to-home audience of folks who are working on transition issues in our region. If folks have questions about how to connect to these blogs or how to get a blog post up, feel free to reach out to Kayla or I, and we can help facilitate that happening. You want to give us some tips, Kayla?
Yeah, so here are some tips from Christopher Whittaker, who wrote this at Smart Chicago Collaborative. So the first tip he has is that blogs should use a lot of pictures to show your story. So Flickr is a really great place to find pictures if you don't have your own images to use. And pictures are just really good to grab the reader's attention and let them see a broader message, especially if they're too lazy to read the whole blog. Second, you want to start with the issue or problems at hand. So this way it makes your reader want to continue thinking and continue reading your piece so that they want to see solutions to it. But most importantly, your post should be about the solutions, not just the problems, because you want to frame your blog in a positive light of ways people can make a change rather than just talking about the bad things with the status quo. So an easy way to do that is ending with a call of action. So this reminds people that they can take action in real life to solve these problems. So you start with the problem, provide a lot of solutions, and then say how the readers directly can get involved. But remember that media is a tool, not a tactic. So the tool is to get people involved in real life, not a tactic to just read something and think you're involved. It's to actually get people on the ground doing real action. So some general tips from us: have someone review it and proofread it, and ask them if it ask them what message they got from it, and if that matches up with the message you were trying to deliver, that means you've done it right. Then ask yourself if it motivates or inspires you, because if it doesn't motivate or make you think about something, then it's not going to make other people motivated or inspired. So always just want to make it a more powerful story. So we have a link below if you want to look at a self-generated media guide from KSEC from our experiences.
Awesome. So that was our media webinar today on self-generated media. I hope it was helpful. We have one webinar left in our series. It'll be the same time next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And we'll talk about getting media coverage. So how do we get our story into the hands of a reporter? And then what the heck do we do if a reporter actually shows up at our event so that we can give an effective interview? Thanks for joining us, and have a great night.